Our snow guys are very dedicated. We're doing whatever it takes to get everything done, no matter the day or the time. And we've built our reputation on that in our area for snow plowing. So we'll do about 625, I think, this year in snow.
Okay.
About 10% of our revenue.
10%.
It's the season is doesn't line up with your summer season, so it's November to April, and then it's always like half and half of each year. But for the snow season this year, we'll do 625. So from like November to now.
For those of you who are listening, just tuning in, this is Marlena with G&M Outdoor Services. She's been on the podcast before. She is an absolute magician on the back end of the business. So her and her brothers are partnered in on an outdoor service-based business. They do landscaping, snow removal, and a lot of excavation work in the summer. And so if you stick around for this episode, you're going to learn how Marlena thinks about just back end, like we've already dove into snowplow contracts here. I assume we'll also dive into a few jobber things because I have some specific targeted questions for her about how they are using jobber, specific to financing and the marketing suite, but we'll get into that a little bit later. For listeners who are just tuning in, can you give us a quick overview of why it would be important to get contracts in place versus having a per-plow? One of the most challenging things about the snow business, so we launched our snow services this past year, and the hardest thing about per time is scheduling with employees because you never know when it's going to snow. It's irregular, and you need that person at that time no matter what. And so if they go ahead and have another job, it's a challenge. And I'm curious how y'all navigate that with your team members.
During the summer season, we have about 30 employees, and for snow removal, we're around 45 usually. We need about 40 to get done for the contracts that we have. So we're always planning for backup because there is going to be people that aren't going to show up every single time when you need them to, when you're going to be relying on them. So we always have a couple of backups. It is difficult because we have our guys that work in the summer, they want to work with us in the winter, and navigating unemployment for the weeks that they don't work or finding another job. So there's a lot of different scenarios that kind of play out for the snow removal and keeping the guys on in the winter. But it's one of those things that just never works out exactly right for the employer or for the employees. So we're still trying to figure that out.
Where are you currently with it? Do you pay a set per week for your contract?
We have some guys that are on salary that work year round. So those are some operators that we can always rely on. Some high school kids for shoveling and weekends, nights, holidays, that type of thing. But it's if they work, they get paid, and then otherwise they're on unemployment or they do other work and it's on them. These last 2 years, when it hasn't snowed a lot, we're able to do some other projects. Like we did a 2-week boulder job back in January, I believe. So we're able to do some other project stuff that we wouldn't normally get to do if it was snowing a lot. We did a couple demolitions this winter and stuff like that.
I recently got back from launching a land clearing business down in Austin, and this last winter I launched a snow shoveling business alongside Per-Plow. And in both businesses, I've implemented Jobber as a way for us to efficiently manage quoting, job schedules, and invoicing, and even collecting online payment. Why? Because it's worked so well for us in Per-Plow and it's saved us a ton of time and headache. So if you are looking for a software that can help you manage the back end of your business, look no further than Jobber. You can visit go.getjobber.com/owner ops, OWNR OPS. So a big question that we've had internally is when we live in these climates where there's seasonal changes, you can only operate a set amount of months out of the year for your main services. For you, it's excavation now, I believe, and I'm sure your landscaping division is still humming along pretty well. For us, it's excavation and forestry work, like land clearing for fire mitigation. But we can physically only do that, like pushing it 7 months, but like realistically 6 months out of the year. And so that brings its challenge in our business model. And the main challenge being that for listeners who are getting into this, it's like you have to go buy expensive equipment that is very
Mhm.
specific to that service. Take your E145, for example. Like that's a very specific piece of machine to the excavation business. For us, we've got a track chipper. That track chipper does nothing for us in the winter, and it's a $180,000 piece
Right.
of equipment. And when I was talking to just the guy I work with, it's like, all right, if we're going to add on snow, we have to look at this as like a business in itself. It's not necessarily just plug and play. And like this model has to be able to support itself. And we have to go have the specific equipment that we need to do snow well, and then utilize our summer equipment, even though if it's not as ideal, like for example, a tracked skid steer, right? It's like that thing has to be
Yep.
working if it's on a contract. And so I'm just curious, like, how did you guys think about it whenever you were building this business model? Were you like blending everything together, or did you look at the two seasonal models as like businesses in and of themselves? Because I know you've mentioned things like in the summer, like you guys bill out for or you pay down double on your equipment payments to make sure you get through your winter.
Yeah, and having navigating the overhead is difficult because we have short seasons. Our seasons, like April to December, is an ideal season for excavation, and then it's about April to November for landscaping, so it's just a little bit shorter. But using as much of your season equipment for the snow, but you're charging your overhead to your customer in your season of 6 or 7 months for year round because yeah, snow plowing is not paying for the 145 or the dozer to sit for 4 months. So it is difficult. This year, we did take out a small percentage out of our overhead because we've always charged the whole year into the 6 or 7 months of our season. And as the cost of everything's going up, as everybody knows, we need to be as competitive on our bids as we can. So, what can we look at on our overhead to cut down on our budget? And we decided to take out 10% of our overhead of salaries and insurance and that type of stuff. Take out 10% overall of our summer overhead and make a snow overhead with it, which we never have had before. And then anything like the 145 dozer, all the excavators, that would all stay in the season overhead. But we are using our 15 trucks or 15 skid steers, we are using that for snow removal. So to create like a snow overhead instead of snow just being the fuel and payroll and stuff like that as an expense. So then creating a snow overhead as well.
Okay. So I believe what you guys used to do, based on what you've told me, is that you guys had like a 12-month overhead and you would bill that to your summer projects. And then you viewed more as almost just
As an extra. Yeah.
okay. And when I approached snow plowing, I did what you're doing now, and I put my overhead into the snow plowing bids, and we went and bid 3 or 4 larger contracts, and we were just too high this last year.
Yeah.
So I'm curious how that went whenever you said, okay, we're going to put this overhead amount, and we're going to bill it into our seasonal contracts. Like you were still able to win some contracts, sounds
So it's reversed because it was in like January, just a couple of months ago, that we decided to take it out of our season overhead for our bidding season coming up for this summer. So I already had all my contracts in place, but we did the percentage of the overhead roughly based on the percentage of snow revenue that we do. So to take, okay, if snow is 10% of our business at $500,000, then that's how we determined it. And so I haven't done it on the pre-bid side, but if I take the 10% plus my expenses plus my income, I'm still at over like a 50% profit on snow removal. So it's not really affecting my prices, it's just affecting my bidding for the summer season to be more competitive when early spring, summer bidding is very competitive and need to have the sharpest number you can.
I see what you're saying. You're saying you just shifted it around on your side.
Correct.
So you're competitive.
Yep. And all of our snow pricing is on the higher end in our area because We are very picky on our accounts. This was our 8th season plowing snow. We've done the driving an hour and a half for one gas station type of stuff, residential a half hour away, that type of thing. So we've done that starting in our first 5 years, where now we can be really picky on what we want to do and at a premium rate. And if someone doesn't like our rate, then it is what it is. We're not bent out of shape about it.
Because the reality is there's not a ton of millennials and Gen Z jumping into snow plowing. If you're
Yeah,
going to get the
yeah,
people in this generation to wake up at 2 and 3 in the morning and come to your house, it's going to cost what it's going to cost.
yeah. And our snow guys are very dedicated. We're doing whatever it takes to get everything done, no matter the day or the time. And we've built our reputation on that in our area for snow plowing. So we're able to do that.
What does your snowplow business top line produce?
We'll do about 625, I think, this year in snow.
Okay,
About 10% of our revenue.
10%.
It's the season is doesn't line up with your summer season, so it's November to April, and then it's always like half and half of each year. But for the snow season this year, we'll do 625. So from like November to now.
Very cool. So did y'all cross 6 last year?
We did.
Good.
Yep.
That's great. I think last time I talked to you and Garrett, y'all were saying the goal was 5 million.
Our goal last year was 5, and we did just a hair over 6.
Hair over 6 million. That's incredible. Hats
Yeah.
off to you. I'm excited for y'all.
Yeah.
That's a
It's
great
looking,
milestone.
our goal this year is to do 6 profitably, and we're a good start with that of doing how much snow we've already done this year.
So for snow, I want to dive a little bit deeper into this because like we've got a lot of listeners here who live in very similar areas as far as climates go, right? In the outdoor services, land services, whatever you want to call it in the summer. And then in the winter, you either got to hang it up or you got to go all in.
Yeah.
We tried really hard year in our business to make a year-round model out of it, like travel with our summer crew several hours away. And then we just realized it was just getting away from our core values, and our core values just being like, we love our families, we love our community, we
Yep.
like living where we live. And we didn't want to just build this model where we're like traveling 3 hours down and 3 hours back, staying in hotels and things like that. So we said, all right, let's go in on snow plowing. When you have bid these contracts, now that you have done it, would you recommend someone in our industry who is considering getting into snow looking for the seasonal contracts or starting at the residential per plow?
You definitely have to have a mix, and we've always have had a mix. And now our mix is to where we want it to be. We're probably 65% monthly contract and then 35% per time. And when we started, or even like last year, we were probably like 50-50, where a company our size now, we need to have more of those contracts. But they are harder to get. It's harder. Your first year, you're not going to get a $35,000 contract for Walmart every month. It's taken us, this is our 8th year, and we've been working towards that. So it does take time to get there. And I think to start out, you kind of have to take whatever you can for snow removal, if it's residential or commercial or however they want to do it. Or we've done and we still do is subcontracting with, we partner with companies that do lawn care, because we don't do any lawn care. And a lot of property owners want to just hire one person to do lawn care and snow removal. So we have a couple of good partnerships with lawn care companies that they can do a lot of mowing, but they can't do as much plowing as they do mowing. So then they need to subcontract their snow plowing out, or they are 45 minutes away. And for lawn care, it's fine to drive 45 minutes, but for snow, 45 minutes is actually an hour and a half if you're in a snowstorm. So that's our biggest thing that we've done from the beginning to now that we're still doing, is partnering with those lawn care companies.
Okay, so one of my questions for snow is when you're building these seasonal contracts, how do you think about paying the team members who are on that specific route or that specific contract? And I'll be a little bit more clear with this question. So when I was bidding some of these larger contracts last year, in my head, it makes the most sense to just take a yearly average and come up with that year over year and work with the property management company or whoever's managing that commercial property and say, here's what the average amount is. This is what I need to make sure that you have an operator and a machine on call all winter long. Is that how you go it internally, or is there a different way that you guys have approached it?
For the contracts, we plan, depending if it's like a high priority, if it's like a HOA that they're not gonna need salting every single time or that type of thing, we plan for 3 to 4 plows a month is how we create our monthly rate. And then on something that's gonna be more like a Walmart or like a Coburn's is like a local grocery store that we service a couple of those. We're going to be there more because it's going to, anytime it's basically any little flakes in the sky, you're out there salting or checking the property. So then those you're planning more on 7 to 8 times per month.
Okay. And then for keeping team members on and operators, whenever you assign them to that account, are you paying them a fixed amount out of that contracted rate to just be dedicated to that account, or
No,
do you still just pay them hourly?
no, they're just paid hourly for whatever they work.
Okay.
So do you guys do it that way that you're paying your guys a percentage of your contract?
So
I've never heard of that, so that
I
interests me.
I have never heard anybody about it, but I always like to think about things of like, all right, if everybody does it this way, that's great, but I always want to think about, is there an easier way to do this? And that was the conversation I was having with the property managers last year was like, all right, you're asking for per plow. We're trying to pay per hour. The hardest thing in this equation is keeping employees during the winter time. But the property manager wants 5-star service and they want us to show up like that on the dime, right? Real
Yep,
time. But they don't
yep.
understand the pains of operating this business of trying to keep people and
Want to pay for your stuff to be, they don't want to pay for your stuff, your equipment and your people to be on call. They only want to pay for when your stuff is on site.
yes, but they want us there at the drop of a hat. And every single
Yeah.
all 300 people in that HOA be there at the drop of the hat, and they're going to be upset if it's
Yep.
10 a.m. and their driveway's not plowed.
Yep.
I really do, and this is just my personal belief. Um, and so I'm really curious how you guys are motivating people and retaining people to come and show up on the drop of a hat like that for these contracts. But in my head, I had it like, let's come up with a contracted rate. Let's take like a 5 to 7 year average of what you've paid out over the total 6 months of the winter. Okay, let's come up with that average. Let's say, okay, we're going to plow 35 times this year. Let's build our budget off of that. And let's come up with a set fixed monthly rate based on our targets for our overhead and our profit margin that we need to hit to operate this business.
Yep.
And then let's plug in our operators in that. And then let's give them a monthly salary, essentially, where it's like that salary is just built
Okay.
into this number. And that way, you, as Mr. or Mrs. Property Manager, know that you're going to have a dedicated operator and piece of equipment on this property for the whole winter. And they're going to be there like that. And the way that we can guarantee that is by guaranteeing this person a livable wage for the whole winter to
Yep.
stay on and be on call with us. Now, we went in and we were close to getting it, but we were a little too high. And so it's like, I think if we can like figure out a way to trim some of those numbers, we could still push in that direction. Because to me, it's like, if I don't, especially in a mountain town, if I don't provide somebody with that monthly salary, they have to go get another job to live here just to afford.
Right.
I'm
Yep.
curious to just get your thoughts on that and then I'll stop.
I've never thought of it that way, so that's very interesting. I'm sure there's probably something with like labor laws or something like that with if you're paying them that plus hours worked or something like that. I don't know how that would work, but we haven't done them that way on the retention side. Quite a few of our guys, they have benefits, so we continue to pay the employer half of their insurance and we carry that through the winter even if they're not working. So for most guys, that's at least $400 or so a month that we're paying as the employer. and then they're still required to pay their half, but we're carrying that over where a lot of companies, if you're not working full time, we're going to terminate your benefits and then we'll start them back up in the spring. So that's one thing that we try to do to help retain our employees. With that, I feel like it's harder for them to just leave and work somewhere else and not come back in the spring, where if you just terminated their benefits, the incentive to return, I think, would be a little bit less.
Do your operators go get second jobs?
They do. Some of them work like on family farms. They'll go work machine shops. There's a lot of different scenarios that guys do. Some guys are home with their kids for the winter instead of the kids going to daycare. So there's a lot of different scenarios.
Okay. But the way that you're doing it, like you found a way to make it work by just paying hourly for the hours that they're plowing.
What they work, yep. And their plowing rate is probably for everybody, it's at least $10 more an hour than their seasonal rate. So you're compensating them a lot higher.
Gotcha. Gotcha. What is an average plow operator rate?
35 to 40.
Okay. Cool. This is an interesting conversation. And yeah, I think it's going to be even more interesting as we move further into Gen Z moving into the workforce. I'm consistently thinking about what does this person need to live a good lifestyle here?
Yep.
And because like we live in a transient community, right? Where it's like ski town. We have people who live here they'll come here for a season and then they'll go somewhere else. But like the people who choose to put down roots here, it's an expensive place to live. And so I'm always thinking about how does this work for that person? Because you have to figure that piece of the equation out. Otherwise, the rest
Yep.
is irrelevant, at least in my mind.
Yep, definitely. And with our guys too, that they're working 60 hours in the summer, so they are making, more than livable wage in the summer when they're making $30 an hour at 60 hours a week. But I think for some of them more than others, it's hard to plan for the winters. So I do have empathy for our guys during that, but I also, there's only so much we can do when it only snows once every 30 days.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's just it was a crazy year. We haven't even had it's basically already working season here and it's 1st of April.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk jobber. Recently, I have been very interested in implementing this financing option, and I'm curious to hear your opinion on it because based on our conversation, you guys have the option and offer it to some customers, correct?
We do.
What are your thoughts?
You and I went back and forth on it a little bit a couple of weeks ago, but I would give it the thumbs up. There's no downside to it. So no skin off my back, no skin off your back if somebody doesn't use it. So I like that because there's programs when I was looking into it that you would have to pay like a monthly fee to be able to offer it. Where with this, no one's financing snow removal, so you're not using it for 4 or 5 months out of the year. You're not paying for it. You're only paying if somebody actually moves forward with it. So I really like that aspect of it.
Can you give us an example of like a type of project where financing came into play during the sales process and made it more beneficial for the customer?
Yeah, it's probably been since last summer, so I don't have a great example off the top of my head, but it would be residential project. I don't know if it's 30,000 or 40,000, somewhere in there of the cap of the job. And then I think there's like a 5,000 minimum or something like that. But the homeowner does have to pay 25%. They have to pay your 25% down payment. So then WiseTech finances 75% of the project. So they're making the customer have a little skin in the game. So you don't just have people hitting finance on a $30,000 job that they can't even put down. They can't even put down $1,000 or whatever it is. So WiseTech makes them do that. There's a pre-approval process, and us as the contractor, we're completely out of that. They just work with WiseTech directly. They apply. It integrates right in your quotes. So like on all of our jobber quotes, you can just hit apply right through there. It'll say in the email, financing offered for as low as this per month, and then you can apply and see your terms right there.
Yeah, this isn't
So we do have that often where people will apply just to see what it is. When rates were lower, we used it a lot more. I think of a year and a half or so ago, it was utilized more than what it is now. But I think hopefully if things have came down a little bit or will continue to, that we'll use it a time or two this year.
Yes, it's very interesting to think about the world we live in and how people look at purchasing. And financing is no longer just this out of the world concept for most people. Interestingly enough, I got to spend time with a guy who's a very successful entrepreneur, owns an internet business. They do about 90 million bucks a year. And he said the amount of projects and products we sold when we added financing options into our sales process was incredible. And I'm working with him on helping him launch a land clearing business outside of Austin. And that was interesting because it was like the first thing he said needs to be implemented into the sales process. And so that's when I was like, oh, I've been seeing this thing inside Jobber, like offer financing to your customers. And so we started diving into it. And
Yep.
that's when I texted you. I'm like, hey, do y'all use this? Um, and so I think it will be really interesting. We're going to implement that into Bear-Claw this year and start offering that to people in the sales process who may have otherwise just not accepted the quote. And for
Yep.
listeners, like I'll report back throughout the summer on how this is working. But yeah, I was consistently like, all right, where's the catch here? Like, how much is this going to cost us? So, what is the fee that you get charged?
Yeah, I was trying to log into my account here to see if I could have an example job to give you like a figure of what the job was and what we paid for it.
Cool.
The terms, like the terms for on the customer side, so it does show me that financing from $500 to $25,000 is what we're set up for. You do, as the contractor and business owner, have to do, there was like a credit app and something, I think they check your credit, or there's something that you have to do just to get the initial account set up, but it wasn't anything too out of the ordinary. It says APR from 0 to 35%, terms from 3 to 60, so it's pretty vague on the terms based on income and that type of stuff. Let me look
To
right
be
now.
clear for listeners, she's talking about the terms that the customer would get.
That the Yes.
So, in this process, the way I understand it, and while you're pulling this up, I'll do a quick explainer, at least from my research. So, whenever you're in the quoting process, you would quote in Jobber. The customer would have the price available. And then at a certain point, at least the way I have it built in my head, is we'll quote the project in full up front, like we have been. But if a customer comes back on any of the price, we're going to add that into our sales process as an option. Then the customer would reach out. And I think it can happen inside of their Jobber portal on their side. Is that correct?
Striker Digital specializes in SEO services specifically for local service businesses. Bodie and Andy, the two co-founders, have helped me get Bear-Claw Land Services to the #1 search result on Google inside my state for my specific search term. If you want to learn more, visit strikerdigital.com. That's STRYKER-digital.com.
Yes, once it's on, I believe it's just always on. So it's not something that you have to add to their quote if they want to use it. They'll see it in your quote email, like your quote template that goes
Interesting.
out, the email that they received the quote from. So then they can, or you can also send them the link directly. So if you're having a conversation with them, then you can send them your WiseTag link that connects with your account.
Okay, perfect. And for listeners, I have not implemented this yet. It's on my to-do list here. So this is really helpful information. So basically what Marlena is saying is whenever you send the quote, they will have the option there to finance it and they'll see that from the very beginning of the sales process. And I actually don't hate
Yeah,
that because it plants the seed early on with them as we're navigating that sales.
that this is an option.
Exactly. And so maybe yeah, maybe that's the real benefit where it's like it plants the seed, it lets them marinate on it, and then they can come to the conclusion on their own.
Yep. Yeah, we've had where they've applied because I get an email, I get notified whenever they apply. So then they've applied to see what it would be, and then they've just said, nope, actually, we're going to pay for it. So I think they're just, especially when rates were lower, that would happen a lot, is they would apply to see what they
I
qualify
see.
for.
I see. And so to clarify once again for listeners here, customer would work with WiseTech, who is a partner inside of Jobber. And
Correct. Yep. So you're not, it's not me working with the customer asking them, okay, how much did you make last year? It's them working with WiseTech directly, and that's all private and
yeah,
secure.
and that's awesome. Like you mentioned in your text, you're like, it's no sweat off our back either way.
Yep.
And it doesn't
Yep.
require any more work. It slows down the sales process a little bit if you're having to wait for a credit application. That's where my head goes, but I don't know, you could talk to that more. Is the approval?
I did it as like I think I had to do it in my husband's name because I couldn't apply because it's my business, but I wanted to see what it was like when we started out. And it was like one of those, it lets you know right away. It's not even, oh, they're going to get back to you in a day or two. It's you put in all your information and it gives you your approval right there as the customer.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty incredible. It still blows
Yeah.
my mind. Can you imagine running a business? Like, can you imagine being in our parents' generation and trying to run one of these businesses off of pen paper?
Yeah. I can't even imagine.
What phase of the business did you implement Jobber?
Our second year, I think. So we've been using it 5 or 6 years.
Before that, what were you doing?
Pen and paper, Google Calendar, Google Sheets, very manual.
So just a guess, like when you made the transition, how many hours did it save you in your office operations role per week?
A lot of back and forth was saved between me and the field because they had to get me everything on paper, time cards, all of that. Get the one thing we still have to get on paper from our guys is receipts. They can't email them in, but some people just give us the paper copy still. And getting a paper copy from the guys is very difficult. And back 5, 6 years ago, we didn't have a shop or anything like that, so there wasn't a central location for the guys to turn everything in, and then you're sorting through everything on paper. So I can't really give a time because we only had 1 or 2 crews at that time too, so our workload was smaller than what it is now. But I would say hours, at least hours a week.
If you had to guess at your current size, if you were doing pen and paper at $6
No.
million a year, how much more time would you be spending
Oh,
doing this stuff manually than using Jobber per week?
I'd probably have to have at least 2 more office people, I would say. I have one full-time and one part-time office gal. So there's 2.5 of us doing the back
Okay,
end.
so what is a rough salary range for a full-time office person?
Full-time 50 to 70.
So $50,000 to $70,000 per year, and you just said that you would have to have at least one, if not two more.
I would say 2 more if everything was paper. Yeah. Just our receipts alone, like our expense receipts and vendor bills and everything like that. Like we do all of that electronically, and that's 200 to 300 per month. So to collect and sort out and enter 200 to 300 paper receipts would be a lot.
So you heard it from her. $6 million a year. If you weren't using Jobber, you would have an additional $100,000 to $140,000 in wages just to accomplish what a piece of software is doing. What plan are you on with Jobber?
Whatever the highest one is, the
I
grow,
believe
I
it's the
think.
Grow plan, yeah. And
Yep. Even the time cards alone, like the time cards for snow plowing on a snowstorm with how many different properties and how many different people, we have 400 punches. So we have 400 clocking in and out that happens that we're reviewing and paying out for payroll. So if you think of that, like if that was on paper and sorting that out and guys' handwriting and like the timesheets alone would be insane for the season when there's 30 people, but let alone the snow plowing when there's 45 and they're all going to 10 or 15 or 40 different properties a storm.
you think that would take you?
Right now, it probably takes us even 2 hours to get through all of that per snowstorm. So I would say it would at least take 2 people a full day to get through paper and entering all of that.
And that's if all 40 or
Yeah.
45 people track their time accordingly and turned in their paper sheets, which you know as well as I do.
Turned it in. Yes. Put the correct property, had the correct time, their handwriting was legible.
There was no
Yeah.
coffee stains.
Yeah. They remembered to turn it in.
Yeah. What do you use for payroll?
We switched to ADP this last fall. So we export reports from Jobber and then enter our totals into ADP.
Okay, sweet. So for listeners, if you're not using Jobber, guys can track their hours inside their own Jobber app. And then on the back end, You download the reports, correct?
Yeah, my office gal
Okay.
does. But
And
yeah, yep, we're reviewing the time to make sure that their time is accurate with their punches in and out. They can add any notes into there if they forget to clock into a site. Say they worked for 10 hours and they were on two sites, but they just clocked into the first Walmart, but they went to both Walmarts, then they add a note into there and then we edit that. So then we can have accurate timing into our jobs so we can see how much time we had on site and job cost appropriately. So like of those 400 punches, it's not just 400 punches and then we're sending that off to ADP. We're going through and reviewing every single one of those.
yes, definitely.
But we can do that in 2 hours, probably at the maximum.
And are you reviewing that
There's
inside the
no event
Jobber app on the timesheets section from your end?
in the
Yeah.
desktop.
So it does make it really, I still handle all payroll in our business and I can speak to this as well. But on the Jobber app on the backside, it's super easy. You can pull in to the timesheet section, filter by the employee name, and then you can just view it by day on which ones they logged. Do you have
Yep,
them?
and check their GPS location too, to just, you can check the little GPS to see if they were, because that helps too. If they do forget to put a note, then you can see what site they were on.
Okay. That is another feature that we just got access to from upgrading to the Grow plan. So I'm curious to either see an example of what that looks like. And the time cards is like are you able to see a map of like where they went that day?
No, it's just where they were when they were clocking in and out or starting their timer on a specific job. So whenever they're tapping like the start timer or clock in or clock out in Jobber.
And
So it's not like a live GPS of where they went for the day. No, it's just like a GPS pin of at the time that they were clocking in and
okay,
out.
so do you have your operators clock in for each specific job during that day? Okay.
Yes, because then all their payroll is getting job costed accordingly. So we're processing all of their hours, and then once we have our payroll back, then we're splitting out their payroll costs to their jobs that they clocked into in Jobber.
Yeah, I like that. So on your day view, when you're looking at, let's just use a random name, Tom's day view, it will have each different snowplow job
Property that,
on their
yes,
specific daily route, and it will show when they started and when they stopped the timer from their app for that job.
yep.
So if they did, even on residential, huh?
Residential, we give them an exception because we have 65 residentials and we just job cost all of our residentials together.
Mm.
So they don't have to clock into each one. So it's residential's treated like its own one
So do
job.
you
That's
have
how we do it.
whoever's handling residential, you would just have them start the timer at the start of their route and then end it?
Yeah, and then they add a note
Got
to
it.
it. They have all of their jobs on their schedule. They have all 65 jobs, which one guy isn't that's between two guys, but they have all their jobs on their schedule, but they're not the time it would take to clock in and out of them when they're only on site for 5 minutes isn't it's not worth it. And I'd rather them spend the time to take the picture of the completed service, add a note and mark it complete than worry about clocking in and out as
Sure.
well.
So that is part of your SOP is that you make them take the picture of the completed snowplow and then log it within that job visit.
At the time that they're there, not do them all at the end or anything like that. Otherwise, if they just mark it complete, I don't know if it was accidentally marked complete or what. So anything that we're marking complete, they are to add a picture and a note.
Yes. And that, I don't know if you've had it. I'm sure at some point. It's important because if a customer reaches out, like I
Yes.
had one guy this year and it was so frustrating because it was like, look, we're literally up the butt crack of dawn out plowing. And I know he had a builder who was building for him. And it was one of those days where it was like, it was an account that we hit early in the morning on an 8-inch storm. And then it's several more inches throughout the rest of the day. And we had gone to the rest of our accounts. And he's emailed me and he's like questioning our integrity on whether we plowed or not. And it was frustrating and it made me mad because I'm like,
Yeah. You can never make a residential client happy. They're either mad you're there too soon or mad you're there too late.
I know. All you can do is do your best and try to set the proper
And have you
expectations.
have your picture. Right. But to have that, like, I know that if something is, so I handle like our residential, they can only email us. We have very strict with our residential clients that they're not just calling us and asking us where we are or whatever. They only can email us during a snowstorm. And they'll email and say, oh, they missed this or whatever. Weren't here in your situation. Then I have that, and I know my residential guys, we're at a 99% that they're putting a note and a picture into
Mhm.
there. So to have that confidence in my back pocket, if I can pull it up and say, nope, Caleb was there at 7:14 this morning, and now the city plow went by, but again, they're going to complain if you're there too early or too late.
It's so true. And all you can do is do your best, right? We're contracted to plow the snow on a certain specific trigger amount. But I will share that because at that time, I had jumped back into our snowplow route. We had about 32 accounts this year just on one of our residential routes. And so I jumped back into that route this year. And I knew that I had plowed it, right? Like he was emailing me, and
Yeah,
I, of course, knew that I was there early that morning. And so it was no question in my mind. I was frustrated because
yeah,
then he's like questioning my integrity. But I'll tell you, as listeners, just take the time and put that into your SOPs to make sure that a picture is logged at the end of each snowplow. It's just going to save you some headache because at that time,
yeah.
I was not doing that. And now, after that one scenario this year, I have it in our
Yeah,
SOP. It's like,
yeah.
we just have to take a picture of the completed project this year.
Yes. And residential is, yeah, it's important. You want to make the customer happy and you're going to go out there and clean it up again. But on commercial, it can be a whole nother thing of a lawsuit or somebody a slip and fall or something like that. So to have that is so important. Like you think of a Walmart, how many people are going in and out of a Walmart every day? That's very vulnerable for us to be taking care of a site like that with that many people that people are very sue happy these days. So to have a picture and each of our guys, like on a Walmart, we have 4 or 5 guys working on a site. They're all taking pictures and uploading that so that we can, if something were to go wrong, that we could have that proof, multiple pictures of, nope, we just serviced at this, or we salted the sidewalk here, or whatever it is.
It's very important, and you're so right. And it's unfortunate that we live in the time where people just want to sue people for anything and everything. And look, like for listeners, I know a lot of y'all are blue collar folks just like we are. And it's like you're waking up early, you're putting your boots on, you're going to work, you're doing all the work. And it's just like when you get in a situation like that where you know you did it, but a customer is questioning, there is no better way to just stop that conversation than by showing them the documentation. And so I would encourage you to learn from my mistake this year of not logging the picture in Jobber. Like we have the tools there. It's just taking the extra 30 seconds to do
Yeah.
it. And yeah, take the time right now, wherever you're documenting your SOPs or your operating processes, just go write that in and make sure that if you're hiring somebody else to snowplow, that you ask them to take the photo. And
Yes, and on that too, Jobber just updated the app. In Notes, you can just hit a camera and it brings up your camera. You used to have to select a file and then either do camera or photo, and it would take forever to load. So now they updated it where you can just hit the camera, it's uploading, and while it's uploading, you can be typing in your notes. Because our guys used to complain they'd have to hold their phone open because sometimes they don't have good service and wait for it to upload until they could do their note and hit save. Now I think it automatically saves and they can be typing their note in while their photo is still uploading.
it's incredible. Do you have any concerns with Jobber as you guys go from 6 to 10 million?
That's not the plan right now, but the no software is going to be absolutely perfect. But we're able to work with Jobber, and we've been working with them for 6 or so years. And we have our based on how Jobber works. So right now, I'd say yeah, there's always gonna be a couple things, but I appreciate that Jobber listens. I have a call with them every quarter, and I have my wish list and my problem list of stuff, and stuff does change, and stuff is being updated constantly.
Yes, I can agree with that. Like super fast support response time. Jumping into snow, like you said, I think Jobber does like everything well for a lot of different service businesses. So yes, there may be another specific, like very specific snowplow software that is like very targeted and this is how you do snowplow. But I think I texted you at the beginning of this year and had just a couple questions for how to set up the recurring jobs with the logging the
Yeah.
visits. And after that quick, like 2-minute instruction that you gave me or whatever, it was like, okay, this is super easy. All we do is set up the job and recurring and then log the visits. And then at the end of the month, it's ready to invoice. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. On the snow plowing, I have no complaints. Residential, no complaints. Commercial, it gets a little bit tricky with pay apps and monthly billing and stuff like that, but they're working on that. I'm working on that with them to get stuff easier for progress billing. You have a $500,000 contract. You're billing as built each month. It's difficult to do that with how Jobber is set up right now, but they're
Oh,
working on it.
I think I see where you're going. So you're saying if you have a $500,000 excavation project and you need to bill in 3 or 4 installments.
Yeah, or 6 or 7 or whatever it is for the season, you're billing once a month for anything that you did. It's difficult to break up line items and partial invoices
Mm,
and that. So I have a workaround that I do, but it's pretty
yeah,
manual.
I'm already seeing it in my head and I'm imagining how that would happen.
Yeah.
It's like probably what different jobs and different invoices for one client with different titles broken down. Yeah.
Yes. Did you want me to go back on my WiseTech breakdown quick? I know we skipped past that, but I do have it open if you want me just to give those
Yeah, that
figures.
would be cool. And then we are a couple minutes past the top of the hour. If we need to wrap up here so you can get
Mm,
to your day, we can totally do that. But yeah, let's jump into WiseTech if you got a few minutes.
okay. Yeah, I do still, no problem. So this was a job example from last year. The loan amount was 16,000. So that would be 75% of the project. And then we paid 3.9% in fees. So we paid $641. If you compare it to the jobber fee, which is 2.6, 2.8, somewhere in there, I would just call it 3% usually for credit card. So you're going to pay another percentage, but I've always thought of it as you're not getting the job regardless. So if you can take 1% off of your job to get the job, why not?
That's interesting. I wasn't even thinking about that. So you're saying it costs you 3.9%, but if a customer was
Yes,
paying for a credit card, it would already cost you 2.9 or
3
3%.
3% is what I call it. Yeah. So we include on our residential bids, we mark up our bids 3% for the credit card fee anyways. So I'm recouping that. So to me, if you're going to pay another 1% to get the $20,000 job, it's not that much. So Wise Tech is making out because that we're paying them the 4% of the job, plus they're getting the interest on the loan. But to the customer, then the customer's not paying any like closing costs or any loan fees or anything like
Ah,
that.
perfect. Okay, I see it. Cool. This makes sense. Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, listeners, I wish we should do a Q&A at some point, especially for Jobber if you're down. I think people would get a lot of value out of that. Just like little odds and ends for how to set up Jobber. Look, before we jumped on the Jobber ambassador deal, I was using Jobber in my business because I love software. I'm a software nerd, and like whenever I jumped into the service-based business, I'm like, all right, let's explore all the different options here. And so I did, and that was like 3 years ago, and ultimately ended up choosing Jobber. And so for each different business we've started, we implement Jobber, and I've been happy with it so far. And I think for the modest amount that they charge you per month, what is it, like
Mhm.
50 a month for the entry plan, and then 150 for the middle plan, which I was on the middle plan for 3 years or 2.5.
Okay. Yeah, it's very affordable, I think, for what you're getting out of it.
And then at your level, $6 million in revenue, you're still using Jobber. You said you would have to have $100,000 to $140,000 additional wage at a minimum to handle.
If you weren't using any software,
And
yeah.
so I think that grow plan, the additional things that you get on the top tier plan is like the GPS tracking. The other thing that we've added in was the marketing suite. I just paid like a CRM specialist to come in. Like I could have done it, but I was just like, I hired somebody on Upwork to go through all of our quotes and our invoices and then set up specific tags. So this year, one thing we're going to do is just like an upsell campaign. So for example, if we've done tree services for a customer, we're going to be marketing like our gravel driveway repair, our sewer and septic repair services. We just want to make sure that all of our customers know about
Yeah.
the services. Are there any other things on that grow plan that like stuck out to you as like big time benefits for stepping up from that? I think it's 150 to 250.
Yeah, I'm looking. We have a partnership with them, so we don't pay for it. So I just was looking into here to see how much it is, but it's 200-ish a month for the Grow plan, and then you have to pay for additional users over 30 as well. So that's something to keep in mind. Like right now we have 46 people, so you do pay for those additional users, but we've been on the plan, I think at least for 2 or 3 years. So we've been on it for a while. So I'm not too familiar with what isn't available on the lower plans. But even for a $200 subscription for what you get with the card processing and the ACH and just the scheduling and the timesheets and the quotes and the everything, like it's nothing.
Do you accept checks from your customers still? Yeah.
Yeah, we push for checks because then we're not paying any fees on it. And I think in what our 8 years of business, we've had 2 bounced checks, so our odds are pretty good. But yeah, we try to. And on commercial, it's always checks, but you're getting a check mailed from them or from the title company.
Yes, definitely. And that was one of the surprising things in my mind of like how easy it is just to log that in the invoice. And it's just so
Yep.
simple. It's like you create your customer, you send them a quote, you book the job, and then you send them the invoice, and it's all tied into one screen essentially on the customer
Yep.
platform. So you
Yeah.
can just see the journey throughout the whole phase.
Yeah. And it's very easy when you get to where we have our sales guys are setting stuff up ahead of time. And then when it's coming into operations and billing, everything's already there. It's not, hey, Michael, do you have John's phone number? It's all right there.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else you want to add for listeners? For hey, here's a benefit that Jobber helps us out with our business.
No, I'm a big Jobber supporter, just as you are. So I would say using getting it and using it. I think I've seen that with people starting out as they get all these softwares and then it's just easier to just keep writing it on a paper and then import it into Jobber at the end of the day. And it's no, just type it into Jobber and then you're done instead of writing it down and then typing it into Jobber that night. So using the tool, having the tool and using the tool and creating your SOPs so that you can you're actually using it and your employees are using it.
Yes. This episode is brought to you by Dialed In Bookkeeping. Ben and his team provide bookkeeping services, job costing reports, and accurate financial information for the home services industry. If you're looking to keep your books up to date, visit dialedinbookkeeping.com/OWNR OPS. When you use this specific landing page, you'll get your first 3 months 50% off. And look, if you've walked in an airport recently, you can just see the statistics of how many people are staring at their phone all day. So rather than scrolling
Yes.
Instagram or Facebook, just delete those things from your phone and put Jobber on your home screen. And then you can use that as your
Yes.
social media app.
Yes. Even with our employees too, it's okay. If you can be on Snapchat when you're in the truck, you can be uploading your job
For
information when
sure.
you're in the truck.
And that's the biggest thing. And this is a complete different rabbit hole. We'll wrap up the episode after this. But it's like
Yeah.
when people say, I don't have time, it's come on, look at your screen time on your phone. I know. So all you have to do is make a
Yeah.
conscious shift, especially as a business owner. It's like
Yes.
if you're a business owner in the small service-based business, like your goal is to create a profitable business, right? So why not just change one of your current habits? It's like it's not taking you any more
Yeah.
time. You're just having to change what you do while you're looking at your phone. Social media, it's a time suck.
Yes. And you using it as the owner and the manager, so then it's just the standard practice for your employees too. So you have to practice what you preach. You can't make them do it. And then you're not setting up the jobs correctly. You're giving them the information. So that's really important to us that they have everything that they need and everything's on their schedule accurately because we're asking them and we're paying them to do it. We're paying them to clock in and out. We're paying them to enter their job information. Like we just had our annual meeting with all of our guys and we were talking about like truck inspections and cleaning up your trucks and cleaning up after yourself. And we're paying you to do this. We're not asking you to clock out and then clean up your truck. We're paying you to clean out your truck. We're paying you to upload the photos.
Yes, absolutely. And I don't know if y'all can see this, but second behind my email app is the Jobber app on my home screen because
Yeah.
it is that
Yeah.
important to me because it makes our
Yeah.
business that much easier. Um, thanks so much for being on here. Anything else that you want to encourage listeners with this year as we head into busy season?
I think if anybody has any questions on any job or stuff, feel free to send me an email. I will get back to you in a day or two if you have any questions on anything. Or my email's on our website, or you can probably, if you want to share it in the show notes, you definitely can. So if you have any questions about anything Jobber, but reach out to Jobber. They're very helpful. They want to help. They have a chat feature. They can look at what you're looking at. So there's a lot of resources out there, and they have a lot of resources too on just even setting up SOPs and stuff like that on their website.
Yes, absolutely. They do a great job of help videos, and they break down exactly like, hey, you need to create a client. Here's a quick help video. So I actually have put together something, and I haven't made this completely public yet, but I built this internally for an SOP for just Jobber how to. So if listeners, if you are listening and you want access to that, I will publish that in my Notion, which is just like a database that we store everything in. I can also copy and paste it into a Google Doc. So listeners, if that would be helpful, it's just, hey, here's how we use Jobber and here's how to get set up. You can, I'll tell you what, best way to do that would be just email me. My email's in the show notes as well. And I'll send you that for free. And then Marlena, thanks for offering up your advice as well, because Marlena is the person I go to when I have an internal, not necessarily how do you do this in Jobber. It's more like strategically, does this make sense? So for example, the last text thread I had with Marlena was like, have y'all been using the financing and has it actually panned out with customers? And Marlena's been in this business for what year are you? 7?
8 years.
8 years. And she's been using Jobber for at least 5.
I can see here in my job right now, August of 2019. So 6 years.
Jobber needs to do something where it's like Jobber Pro or something, and Marlena needs to be at the very top of it. Hey, thanks again for being on. And listeners, thanks for listening to another episode of the OWNR OPS Podcast. We talk all about starting and growing local service-based business. We're on a mission to help 10,000 of you out there start and grow your business profitably by 2030. So we hope that you're getting value out of these episodes. All these episodes are free to listen to. We publish one episode every Friday, and we summarize the episodes, the key learnings, and then send that to you in a weekly newsletter on Saturdays. So if you haven't signed up for the newsletter yet, just go to the OWNR OPS website. It's OWNROPS.com/newsletter. And then just enter your name and email. We'll send you the summary of this episode, key learnings, and points that Marlena talked about. And we'll keep doing that every week. Thanks again for listening. Don't forget, work hard, do your best, and never settle for less.